a recording of a conversation that a friend and I had July-ish of 24. She invited me to be one of her first guests on an up-and-coming podcast that she was working on creating. She wanted to talk about my evolution, how I had gone through the spiritual journey, spiritual awakening, and kind of coming out of, a couple of decades of cult life, hashtag cult life, and how I was developing a new spiritual practice. We had a great conversation full of tons of resources and sharing stories and just kind of talking about and digging into the things that helped me get through each process along the way. So if you're going through a spiritual awakening after having a long history of, maybe like a high control, toxic, religious experience, or even just were in a church that you just felt like kind of had too many fingers in, whoa. Or if you just came out of religion after spending a long time there and you're having this hard time kind of navigating those old messages, that old religious framework, and don't feel quite free enough yet to explore all that's out there and available to you in the spiritual world, I encourage you to hang out and watch this episode because we shared a lot of resources. We shared a lot of great information about how to navigate each step and how to kind of reframe and dig in and experience things on a level that's right for you. So grab a snack, come hang out with us, and enjoy the conversation.
All right. So tell me what your new mantra is.
So my new mantra has been time bends at my will and a path is always laid out before me.
Oh, that's magic. In and of itself, that is magic.
And I came to that because I had been stressing so much about, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I was so caught up in feeling like I didn't have enough time. And I was starting to feel sad because it felt like all the things I really wanted to do, all the dreams that I have been like percolating in my mind, the things I've been working toward and trying to build a business for a couple of years online and just all these creative ideas. And my financial situation was one that I had to go back to work full time or mostly full time. And so all these things that my heart was wanting to spend time doing didn't get the time and the energy that I wanted to give them because I had to go to work and I had to be on someone else's time clock. And it just came to me one day, you know what? Time is a construct. Time is not real. It's an experience and you make time for the things you want to do. So how much it just caused me to sort of reflect on what am I spending my time doing? Reevaluate. How much time are you spending on social media? How much time are you spending in the evening just Netflixing or watching, TV with your husband because he's home and it's like that's kind of his thing and you want to be with him, so you're doing that. And so you're letting go, you're sacrificing those moments that you could be investing in the things that you are wanting to work on for this other thing. So it's all just perspective to me. It came about that it's just perspective to me on what's most important to me. And I have all the time I want. And so I would drive to work sometimes. I work in 2 locations and one location's a 30-minute drive ish. And I just started saying in the mornings, like, I have all the time I need. I would say that all the way to work. And I swear to you, I got to work in 20 minutes. And I was like, what in the world? And it just became this like thing I started observing that all of a sudden it seemed like time wasn't passing at all. I had all kinds of time and all kinds of energy and I was doing all kinds of new things. It's been really magical.
And there is the expression of your magic, right?
Yeah.
In that moment.
The latest one anyways.
The latest one. You're not bending spoons, you're bending time.
No.
That's awesome.
No big deal.
That's awesome. What an amazing perspective. Like, yeah, there's just the opportunity to go, yeah, I got plenty of time. I have plenty of time for what matters. The rest of it, it'll come along.
Yeah. And it really sent me into this place too of like just letting go of stress. Like I didn't need to stress anymore. And it helped me too to say like, Because often I would also get stuck almost like deer in the headlights moments when I was like,
Mm.
I need to do this. I need to do this. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Like all these shoulds, right?
Yeah.
When I just got quiet and said, time bends at my will. I have all the time I need to do all the things I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to do things I want to do instead of the things I need to do, because
Mhm.
time bends at my will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
so
love
there was all this freedom to just go play and go do whatever I want to do. I'll
Yeah.
get to the things that need to be done. It'll be fine.
Or some magical creature will show up and do the dishes for you. It's just,
I mean,
yeah.
no.
So let's can we rewind to roughly a year ago when you and I met in a line to get some food? You had the most adorable hat on, which I was immediately drawn to the hat because I love you had this great like page boy hat on. And,
Yes.
with your curly hair, and I just was so drawn to it. And I thought, gosh, she looks adorable in her hat. Struck up a
Aw.
conversation, and so much has happened in the course of that year.
Mm.
And the conversations that I want to have with people in this particular forum is about how they're expressing their love, how they're expressing their magic, and how they're getting to an amazing level of consciousness and awareness and wellness. So can you, if you feel good with it, can you share where you were at when we met a year ago?
I was scared. I felt like a very scared. As I look back, I see it. In the moment, I don't think I saw it. But that weekend we were at a conference, real estate conference, and that whole weekend, all that kept coming to me was that I was in the wrong environment. I just kept
Mm,
feeling like out of place. That's the best phrase. I felt
yeah,
out of place.
yeah.
And in the moment, I was thinking maybe it's just my own limiting beliefs about, because I was new to the whole real estate thing and I was still learning and I was like trying to muscle myself into abundance. I was trying to muscle myself into like this new persona of
Hmm.
like a successful real estate mogul or something, um because I really wanted, I was coming out of kind of I'd been in the corporate world, absolutely miserable. Just before going into the corporate world, I'd been working on 2 different master's degrees programs, and while I was doing those programs, I was reprogramming my spiritual self,
Mm.
um after a 20-year long very toxic marriage. So it all kind of led to that place. And so that's why I say I think looking back now with clearer sight, I was very scared. I didn't know what my future was going to look like. I was working through a lot of personal development and trauma and trying to, break free of limiting beliefs. I didn't believe I was worth anything. And honestly, I was aware of that at that time. And so I thought maybe that's what was going on with this whole out of place feeling, that maybe I'm just stuck in old limiting beliefs that, I can't be successful. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Like, who am I to, open my mouth in public or do anything for someone else, or, those
Mm.
kinds of things. So I was really wrestling that weekend and in that time of my life I knew I wanted something new. I had been going through many transformations kind of back to back for several years.
Mm.
But I don't think I had landed yet. I was still searching, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So fast forward a handful of months. How do you love yourself through that? Because I think probably in the moment you didn't feel like you loved yourself very much because you felt, I mean, I'm paraphrasing or interpreting. you didn't feel like you knew who you were, knew where you were going, knew what you were at. You may have made the wrong decision. Should you have come to the conference? Should you have joined that mentorship? Should you, you're going through all these things. How do you love yourself or learn to love yourself through all of that experience? Because I recall our early conversations of a lot of, I have stacks of these books of all these things I want to do. And, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to learn that thing, I'm going to do it. And so there was this manic kind of, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, which is very common. I was in a similar place myself. Um, and how did you love yourself through that?
Yeah, it's a good observation, and it's an interesting one too, because my human design is such that I'm kind of designed to try everything. That's sort of, so my human design, I'm a 6'2" sacral generator. Thank you for introducing me to human design, by the way.
Welcome.
So it's my design to have sort of 3 stages of my life.
Mm,
And one of the stages is just try everything.
mhm,
And because of the high control religious world that I lived in, that wasn't encouraged. And I was pregnant at 21, married at 21. Like, I was 8 months pregnant when we got married.
mm,
So I was, from a very young age, instantly expected to be a good Christian wife and mother. And so
mm,
I didn't get to try everything.
mm,
And so it really wasn't until I left that marriage that I started trying everything.
mm,
And so, but I had felt like I had lost so much time. That was
mm,
kind of another one of my big hiccups, was like, I wasted my whole life doing
mm,
this thing. I was stuck under this umbrella of feeling like I didn't have enough time left, and to do all the things, to try all the things. But I've always been one for personal growth, and I love learning. I'm a teacher at heart, so all that means is that I love learning.
yeah.
So I was reading a million books, and I was loving all of them, like, try everything, try everything, try everything. It was just that it was kind of manic. Looking back, it did feel a little bit manic, but at the same time, I was kind of having the best time because I'd been refused learning for
Mm,
my whole life. And so I was totally okay living in that. But one of the things that I learned during that time was to discover my own voice, because I
mm,
didn't know it left from right, in from out,
mhm,
up from down. I mean, I had so many voices. I was aware of all the voices in my head of, like, my ex-husband, my family, my children, society, religion, toxic religion, like, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. I was like, well, which one's me? I didn't even know God's voice from, what at the time I thought was Satan. Like, like, I don't believe in Satan anymore, for the record, but at the time
FYI.
there yeah, side note. So at the time I thought, because also in religion, like, this is what really had me twisted, was that the devil disguised himself as light, right? So I didn't even know how to trust what I thought might be God's voice. Well, maybe it's Satan disguising himself as light. So I was a hot mess.
Mm,
I didn't know what voice was what, and if I even had one left.
yeah.
And so my expression of love was learning how to recognize all those voices and understanding what those were. And I'll tell you, one of the books that changed my life was Boundaries for the Soul.
Mm,
I believe it's Allison Cook. She co-authored it with somebody else, but for some reason she's the only name I ever remember. But that book really helped me, because at the time, I needed a book from a Christian perspective.
yeah.
And it helped me to make peace with all of these different voices and
Mm,
understand that so
mm,
many of them were protectors of my wounded places. And so I think, just for me, just learning to hear my own voice.
yeah.
And it's a continual process, because I'll still discover some today that are like, I mean, this week, I'm going through sort of some of these sad emotions and feeling like, what is this? Where is this from? I don't even, nothing happened to me. I just woke up this way, and don't even remember dreaming or, so just learning to be patient with myself and be able to sit with myself. I've taken on meditation the last few years, and that has really helped me to just kind of get quiet and breathe. And yoga I've been doing for about 10 years, so that's where my breath started, and then meditation is where my silence kicked in. And
yeah,
so now I'm able to not judge myself. Michael Singer's work has been incredible for me too, because he takes a lot of East and West, and those were my two master's degrees. I did one in liberal arts, which is Western thinking, and the other one was in Eastern classics. And so when I started to see sort of this worldwide picture, and my prayer became, instead of, at first when I left my ex-husband, my prayer was, who's telling the truth, God? Which religion is right? Which church do I even go to? Who do I trust?
Yeah.
It transformed while I was working on both of those programs to, okay, why don't you just tell me where you've been in all of time and space? Let's just start there.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big question. Where you've been in all of time and space.
But I needed to go that big, right? Because I had put such a tiny cage and such a tiny box and such a tiny expectation. I had to open myself up to everything and just be like, okay, let me just let God, let the divine show me in all cultures, in all places on the earth and beyond, in all the things that I could ever think or imagine or experience. Where do I see God? Where do I see evidence of God?
Yeah.
And that really helped me, because as I went through the Eastern Classics program, I was reading books that I had been told were demonic.
Right.
And I saw God there.
Yeah.
And so I had to be like, okay, all right, let's just scrap all that and start from the beginning.
Can we separate God and love, and are they the same thing? Or are they different?
Mm-hmm. Love is a tricky word for me, because love is an essence, right? But it's also an experience.
Yeah.
And we can experience it wrongly, or it can be defined for us in such a way. Like, I've been thinking about this, and we've been talking about this on the podcast about, like, we can't say God is love and expect everything to just fall into place and be okay with that, because so many of us, especially coming out of toxic spirituality or religion, had love defined a certain way.
Yeah.
Turns out that's really not what it was. So there's this difficult sort of journey of, I brought up in one of the episodes about, it's kind of like Stockholm syndrome to me, in a way, where like there's someone who was captivated and fed something for so long that they began to identify with it, and it became so ingrained in them that once you remove them from that situation, you almost have to, like, I mean, they have to learn everything all over again.
True.
And religion is such a moment that is reflecting this to me lately, because that's all you hear. God is love, 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 God is love. But what am I experiencing? I'm experiencing manipulation, control.
Yeah.
Don't trust yourself.
Right.
Sacrifice yourself for others. Don't take care of yourself, because that would be selfish. And so all of those things were like the experience underneath God is love. And so there's this massive dissonance, this massive disconnect. So I think in and of its, in its essence, it itself is pure and holy and love and light and high frequency and all the things, and God is that. And I also, though, am aware of this idea of darkness. Love was also defined as pure light, but I'm becoming more and more aware of the relationship with darkness. And in the religious world, darkness is evil, and darkness is to be avoided and vanquished and overcome and victory over, right?
Right.
And now I'm stepping into love for those places, love for those things that seem dark, love for those moments in me where I feel dark, I feel sad, I feel low expression, I feel low vibration, I feel unloving. And I'm stepping into a moment in my life where I'm starting to appreciate those places because they're just showing, it's just information to me now.
Yeah.
It's just showing me a place where I can grow. It's just showing me a place that needs more attention. It's showing me a place that needs more light. And we did this whole thing of like April showers bring May flowers. And we talked about sort of this April showers moment is like this when you're sitting in the darkness or you're sitting in this really rough patch of life where you're just not sure what's happening. Everything feels like chaos and the world seemed like nothing falls into place and you just want to say screw the world and hide, right?
Right.
That's where light is born.
Yeah.
Even in the Bible, darkness was there first.
Mm-hmm.
Light came from that,
Yes.
as the spirit hovered over the darkness. So there's just a new form of, I'm just continually learning more and more and more about love and how much it actually inhabits. And so it even inhabits all that darkness and all of that difficult stuff that we would, or that I used to say should be vanquished and
Right.
avoided.
Yeah, I feel like Christianity is one of the only religions I've experienced, and I haven't done extensive study that does cause you to avoid the darkness when you look at other teachings. Even the yin and the yang is the light and the dark. It's the dark is the womb space. So, that is our place of nurturing and comfort and warmth and where we go into, like you said, you go into the darkness and you find all of those elements that were considered not good enough
Right.
or to be avoided, which is why part of the reason people hang on to trauma for so long is like you can't deal with that. Like
Right.
shove it in the box, right? So we were taught to avoid those elements, and then I hear from other teachings, no, let's go into that. Like, let's go into that darkness. And we have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because in that space, you see the contrast. We can't know love without knowing hatred. It's hard to recognize the difference between light and dark. If you've had all darkness all the time or all light all the time, you're not going to know the difference. And the goddesses or the representations in other teachings like Kali and Shakti and Ashtar and things like that are not to be feared, but to be harnessed and utilized, which kind of brings us into the conversation about magic, because Kali is this chaos energy from which destruction happens, but creation also happens as well. And we've done construction for years. Like, well, that's been our primary business. You can't remodel a bathroom until you tear out the old one, right? And so we want to like skip over, this is that spiritual bypass of it. And I feel like Christianity and some of the other religions do this as well, is we're not going to look at that because it's kind of ugly, and we're just going to be happy, and we're going to be, and don't talk about that. I mean, unless you're going to talk to certain allocated people who we have deemed appropriate enough. And it's been in the like I did, this was full moon weekend, right? So I've started doing some sort of rituals and other practices. Um, and one of them was just to write down all of the stuff I'm releasing in order to move to the next level in my life. And boy, did I experience release. Like it was, and it was not fun moments. Like this is, when you come into like my husband said something which triggered me, I knew I was triggered, right? So I knew this wasn't about him, it was about me.
Right.
And I went into this like age 5, my father was disappointed in me. And then all of a sudden it rolled through my whole life of like all these decisions I made because I didn't want to disappoint my parents or I didn't want to disappoint myself or all the times I've wanted to step forward, but I didn't because if I take that risk and I do it wrong, I'll disappoint someone or I'll, whatever. So all of the things I've avoided because of that one element. And so excavating all of that was tears and ugly and screaming and swearing and the whole 9 yards for like an hour. And my husband's looking at me and he's like, okay, no, I keep telling him, this isn't about you. Like,
Yeah.
this is not you. This is me like processing my stuff.
He's like, note to self, don't ever say that again.
Right. And so, get through the end of it and I go, wow, yikes. But then I step forward and I go, what is my next phase? What is my next level? What magic am I looking to express into the world? Um, so you mentioned right at the top of this before we started recording that the last couple of days you've had some difficult moments. And I know because we've done, some work together that has been the case. You've experienced those down into the mud,
Yep.
right? Now back up into the top, like into the
Yep.
happy, you know. So can you share like some of those experiences that really, illustrate the fact to me that we need to go in, do it, and then come out of it and find the light from it.
Yeah. So this full moon was my first time ever really doing a practice or like a ritual. It was my very first experience. And when you said you did something, like my whole body lit up because I remembered what I did and I was like, it's so good. I made my first little jar of moon water and went out. I had been woken up at 11:11 the night of the full moon and was like, okay, I guess I'll go do something because I hadn't planned on doing all this. I'd heard about it, had been reading about it. It was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Whatever. Not really my, or I don't really feel like I know enough to, blah blah blah. In my mind, one of my things I always work through is like the not good enough, right? So but I felt prompted, so I went out. I got up and I did the things and I went out and I just set my intention of what I was going to let go of and what I was going to step into because I have known for a while what I'm supposed to step into. Uh and I'm in the womb of that right now. And so I set my intention, I did my thing, I spoke my intention into the moon water, let it sit under the light of the moon all night long. And we had beautifully clear skies and my backyard has 0 trees. So
wow.
it was like direct access all night long. It was so great.
Yay.
I just pictured my little jar of moon water getting just bathed all night long. It was so great. So then got up in the morning and drank my little thing of moon water and had just felt amazing. And the next couple of days or the next day or two, I felt really great. And then then it happened. I started waking up sad. And I'm like, what's this all about?
Yeah.
But not really wanting to deal with it. But yeah, I feel like that it's happened a few times where I'll start to feel something. I'll be vibing pretty good, pretty high, and I'll start to feel something. And it just to me has become these moments where it's just being brought to my attention. Okay, we're ready to deal with this. We're ready to be seen. Something's ready to be seen. Something's ready to be acknowledged. Something's ready to move on.
Yeah.
Is kind of the perspective I've tried to take of it. Because before I used to think there was something wrong with me for like, why can't I just stay up here? Why can't I stay high vibing all the days? in all the ways and all the times? Why do
Yeah.
I keep bottoming out, And I've had some moments like that too, of just like screaming, crying, emotional release, doing the things, and then I feel like exhausted for 3 days, and then I'm like, okay, I'm better now. So I'm expecting that in the next few days, but because I did a healing, just before this call, and yeah, so it's just I think, again, learning my own voice and learning to trust myself. That was a big part of my process, and I'm still learning that in lots of ways too. I think every time a new thing comes, some of my first thoughts are that I'm wrong, or I'm misguided, or I'm, something negative.
Mm-hmm.
And or like this whole journey's just BS, like, I'm sorry, we didn't talk about cussing. I don't know where, but like all this spiritual stuff's just wonky. Go back to your Christian box, and you were happier there, because honestly, there, sometimes in this journey, I look back and I kind of compare, and I'm like, I've been doing so much of this
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like back in my Christian box, it was more like this, but it was way down here, like this.
Mostly low, very few highs.
Mostly down here.
Right.
And I was on pharmaceuticals. I had been diagnosed with major depression, anxiety. I was told I'd be on pharmaceuticals the rest of my life. I was told I had PTSD or not PTSD, PMDD, all these things, so
right.
Happy announcement, I'm not on pharmaceuticals anymore. I did heal myself naturally.
You're loving it.
And that's why I'm experiencing a lot of this, because I have so much, past trauma that is ready to be seen and move on. And so they're getting a lot less extreme. Like in the beginning, very extreme, right? It was almost nauseating. And now it's more like, oh, I'm dipping. Oh, I dipped, or something like that. So yeah, I feel like even just this week, it's just been like even though I've been feeling sad and I cry a bit, it's just a blip. It's not like this despair of my life. So, and I'm able to recover a lot faster. And I get more and more tools every time. So that's been really great and really fun and really helpful, so that it gives me confidence to like keep walking forward, and like, okay, blips will come, and I know that, and I'm not afraid of them anymore. I used to, when I at the tail end of my marriage, we were in counseling, and I would tell the counselor, like, I was so stoic and I was unwilling to go into dark places or talk about sad stuff or feel many of my sad, difficult emotions. And I remember telling him, I'm afraid I will fall into a pit and never come out. Like, I was so afraid of depression. I had been so low that I had been hospitalized I was on watch.
Oh, wow.
And so it just got to the point where I was like, I'm just not going to go there. I'm just not going to feel. And so, and now I'm not afraid of that. Now I'm not afraid of dark feelings or feeling allowing my emotions to come. That was the thing. I was suppressing everything because I was afraid it would take me over. And now I'm not afraid of that. Now I've had enough experiences, and I trust myself enough, and I trust the divine enough that I can let those things come. I can feel those things. I know that every time I step into that and I allow it to come, I am seated in another place. My core, my essence is allowing my body to experience that thing so that it can move on, so that it can be healed, so that it can transmute whatever language you want to put onto it. But I have a divine seat within me that is allowing leadership, providing leadership for this whole experience. and that I will never lose that seat ever.
Mm-mm.
Always have that seat. This is an image that Michael Singer gave me, like the seat of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
That I sit in the seat of the soul at the heart, and I provide leadership to
Mm-hmm.
all of those voices, to all of those experiences, to all of those wounded places. And I've just been working over the last several years to build trust with all of those places, trust with all of those voices and experiences that are kind of still sitting there under the surface, or, in the past or whatever. So yeah, I feel like we're getting more and more trust every year, and I'm able to let more and more things go. So it's a good stuff.
What got you through the hardest parts when you didn't have this perspective and there were higher highs and lower lows? What were some of the things that got you through that?
Oh gosh. I mean, different things at different times. I think when I was going through the extreme highs and lows, nature has always been so good for me.
Mhm.
I was probably going through the worst of it when I was in the grad school programs, because I had just left my husband,
Mm.
and 6 months later I went to school. So I was going through the divorce. I was in a new place. I was going to school in New Mexico, and I was
Mm.
in Santa Fe. I was in the mountains of Santa Fe. So I was surrounded by trees, and I can still smell the pine even as I just think about it right now. And I did a lot of hiking. So moving my body, being in nature for me has always been so good. That got me through a lot.
Yeah.
And then just one or two solid people in my life who loved me no matter what was happening, even if they were disappointed or frustrated or whatever. Like my mom, like she just loved me. And you know
Mm.
some other people came into my life pretty quickly. And divine, I think if you stop and look, you'll just see all the little things, sometimes little, sometimes big, that the divine always provides for you. Source
Yeah.
always gives you some kind of anchor, something to hang on to, something that's meaningful to you.
Right.
Like for me, it was nature, but for somebody else, it might not be that. For
Mm.
somebody else, it might be a cozy beanbag chair and a
Mm.
blanket and a cup of tea, or
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to find the place that allows you to ride the waves, right?
Mm-hmm. And essential oils. I mean, honestly, like I remember people like, dogging on essential oils, and, like a bunch of hippies, or, like, people just look down on people, essential oils,
Whatever. Yeah.
go to the
Mhm.
doctor, get a prescription,
Right.
so, but they still like, they got me through a lot. They healed me a lot. Learning, I have this really great book. I don't know if it's in print anymore, but something like releasing emotional patterns using essential oils. And
Yep.
that
Hmm.
book helped me a lot with all the charts, and because I didn't know any of this stuff, so having that book to show me like where on my body are some common points where this, can be worked out, and
Sure.
this, use this oil or that, so
Right.
it was a really great guide and a really help for me, really big
Hmm.
help. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we
And
call them
honestly, divine has
properties.
always sent someone. Divine
Mm.
has always sent someone. And at this time, when I first was introduced to essential oils, I was ready to leave behind, like, um, in my body. I was ready to get off of pharmaceuticals. I wanted something different in my body. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And this person came into my life who brought the essential oils, and she was a Christian gal, and helped me like start thinking about my dreams. She was big into dream
Mm.
interpretation, and that was weird for me as a Christian, to have a Christian person who loved Jesus, talking about interpreting dreams. I was like, oh,
Right.
that's weird. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. Yeah, but it was just that. And that's the cool thing too, is that divine brings you, or has brought me, people with enough tie to where I'm at that I can trust them,
Mm.
but enough connection to the next thing that they challenge me. And you're one of those people. So I love
I'm
that, and I appreciate that.
so blessed to be part of this journey. Um, can you kind of share a couple of, you've shared some really good books. I think those are awesome. I also like Michael Singer. The Surrender Experiment was like, that was a big one for me. I've tried to go back and listen to it again. I think it's coming back to me regularly. So I think it's time to go back into it again because we're taking next steps. Like, we're taking big next steps. So I need to be able to be like, all right, I don't know how this is coming, but
Yeah.
I'm ready. Bring
Yeah.
it along. Um, Today, what kinds of things or what kinds of things fill your cup up? What kinds of things bring you enjoyment, that you may not have experienced 6 months, a year ago? What kinds of things are happy for you now?
Woo, I've never talked about this publicly. Are you ready?
Sure, let's go.
Yeah, so only in the last few months, I've come into tarot, and so you had pulled some oracle cards for me, and that was it's so cool the way divine works. I had never heard of that. So
Mm.
that was a really great way for divine to sort of slowly, gently, carefully kind of lead me into like the whole world of divination. Like, congratulations, you've leveled up into what you thought was everything demonic. So so yeah, I kind of like, I went into my local new age store and I was questioning it and thinking about it, and the gal there was very helpful, and she helped me, and I was like, what's the difference, between oracle cards and tarot cards, and what's the deal and all the things. But I was really intimidated, and I still felt uneasy. And
Mm.
so I didn't buy anything, and I left it alone. And I had gotten this message maybe in the fall. Um, Jesus is enough. I
Mm.
was like, okay, I have no idea what that means, but all right. So
Mhm.
I just kind of let go of everything, and I spent some time getting to know Jesus again. For the longest time, couldn't even read the Bible. I was just like, all I heard was religious,
Sure.
my church. All I heard was
Right.
my church. So January of this year, I sort of just got quiet on everything else I had started to explore and just decided I would spend time with Jesus. Okay, just let me just and I developed this thing, listening prayer.
Mm.
And so for me it was this exercise that I'd been introduced to, that where someone would kind of, or you could yourself just kind of go in, and it's like a meditation, and you're just asking spirit, or Jesus in this case, like, where do you want to meet today, and what do you want to talk about, and all these, how do you see me, and all these things. Well, I couldn't do that just in my brain. I had to get paper and pen and write things out.
Mm.
And so I started this practice of just writing out my question, and then what I heard as my answer.
Yeah.
And every day I was just and coming up with all of this really cool stuff and asking all these cool questions, and just kind of developed this practice of like talking to spirit and talking to the divine, and writing down everything I got. And I just called it Conversations with God, and totally see it being my first book. But it was just this really great grounding place for me to develop a connection, because prayer had always been in the past just me, oh, worship you, thank you for this, that, and the other. Not, it wasn't two-way. It
Yeah.
was just me to him. And so this whole two-way conversation has been pretty new
Yeah.
and really great, and it really gave me a lot of confidence, and it created in me this moment of stability for like, I know my connection with the divine. So and also I was working on like deconstructing some other religious beliefs about hell and about Satan and about demons and all these things. And so these two things are kind of happening parallel, where I'm deconstructing that on a sort of intellectual or scholarly level, and I'm experiencing the divine in my listening prayer meditation times. And so it's beautiful how the divine sort of led me through all of that.
Yeah.
And now I sit in this place where I just feel like things outside of me, whether it be tarot cards or oracle cards or I don't know, tiny little Buddha statues, or I'm trying to think of all the things that I was told were demonic or held demonic spirits. Even yoga, like yes, I have beads too. Like all the different things, they don't hold power outside of what I give them.
Right.
It's my intention, it's my energy, it's my inner power and my connection to divine that infuses those things and gives those, like those things are all just tools. They're not even necessary.
Yeah.
In the end, like in reality. And so I don't hold fear anymore that I'm going to accidentally let demons into my house or into my heart or my home or my spirit or my things. Like it's just not even a thing anymore.
Right.
So yeah, tarot has been so fun. I have loved it with all my heart and soul. And recently I just have started adding to my collection. So I bought like a couple oracle decks and this like affirmation deck and a numerology deck. And I just kind of picture myself like, working with people. I'm going through a spiritual intuitive coaching hypnotherapy thing where I'll be certified at the end of it all, and just have a deep desire to work with people to see them heal. And I just can see like just all these tools and all these fun things because I'm a visual. Like I love to see something and to feel something, and I'm tactile and all, so that's just joy to me. That's just happiness. Like I said, it's not essential or necessary for healing or any of the things, but it's fun. And I'm trying to like follow breadcrumbs of joy. And so those things are fun. They bring me joy, and they do add some clarity for me sometimes when I feel a bit stuck or I feel a bit like, I'm not sure if I'm just kind of living in ego or my, my headspace or my heart space. I just, can you just help me, spirit, and I feel like those things are all just really great tools that I feel totally at peace with nowadays that I never did before.
Yeah. I had a woman that I knew from a church I attended for a long time contacted me one time, and this was long after I had left. And I'm over, exploring and learning and doing new things and getting into my own power and my own magic. And she messaged me and she goes, "Do you work with oracle cards?" And it was the most random, like we didn't talk very often, out of the blue. And I thought, okay. So the last time we talked, we were like in the church.
Yeah.
Oh, she's asking, and I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, here and there. Why? Why do you ask?" And she said she had been exploring different things, and she had gone into the metaphysical shop in town, and they had somehow mentioned me in conversation. She said, "I just kind of feel like it's an easier way for me to get an answer to my questions." So, that's how she interpreted. I'm like, well, that makes sense as an interpretation. And I've also used them on occasion, like you mentioned in session, where it brings up another energy, a shift or an awareness or a bit of knowledge that guides us down the next path. So I've had a lot of fun with them myself. I have more decks than I probably need, but why not? So I think that's cool that you found a tool that you're enjoying and having a good time with. And it can be a great awareness for people, particularly when they're not yet connected into themselves. Because obviously our goal, I know you and I have shared this and I've shared this with others, our goal as practitioners and as people that are guiding others is to guide them to themselves.
Right.
And how they get there, it looks different for everyone, but to guide them to themselves and say, you have a higher self and you have a great connection to the divine. You were mentioning your throne, your seat, and I have sort of like this oval table in my heart chakra where it's a bit more like a mm, I wouldn't call it Knights of the Round Table thing, but it's not, it's particularly not rectangular, so there's no head of the table. Granted, this is me and my higher self. This is my energy field and my life experience, so I'm kind of in charge of this thing. However,
Yeah.
there's around it guides and angels and archangels and the divine, and creator source is like the energy that fuels the table, if you will. So everything we write on there is infused with creator power and knowledge and momentum,
Yeah.
because it's about the manifestation at that point in time, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
It's about the manifestation that, so is it, I want to move to Kentucky and do some cool things, or is it, do I want, more money in my bank account, or do I want more clients, or do I want to heal this disappointment, or whatever it is. So it's always fueled, because that feels like it's such a connection to ultimate power, and not in a I'm going to be over you, but ultimate power of creation.
Yeah.
And if there isn't, if there is a singular energy that has this sort of, I want to experience all of creation through you guys, because I love that interpretation that the creator went, I want to experience all of myself, so I'm going to create humans and animals and trees and plants and rocks and all this sort of thing, and we're going to see how this all goes. That really is fascinating, because that is a whole lot of gumption to make things happen. So I love that you're exploring something that, and moving into helping others. There is so much to this consciousness ascension, thought processes, feelings, emotions, getting through it all. And then there comes to this point where it's, I'm working on me. I'm doing pretty good. I'm standing on my own. I've taken responsibility. Now I'm ready to link arms with you and show you that you can also have this. And then we can all have this absolutely brilliant experience. And what I see in the outside world feels like when a plant comes up from the ground, like there's all this energy underneath, and there's all the fungi and the bacteria and the rhizomes and everything. There's all this stuff going on under here. And that feels like you and me and those of us who are doing the work. And then eventually this plant's going to burst through the ground, and then the world will never be the same. The world will have a new plant and a new flower and a new experience. And a lot of what was existing before may change. It has to change. Because it's not built on, I guess you could say, agape love. The beauty of the Greek language is that it defines love in many, there's like 14 different definitions of love, versus the singular word that we use in English.
Yeah.
That was an interesting exploration I learned from a pastor who was a big researcher into language and translation and everything else. And I remember him talking about that. And the idea that I love you and every part of you, because the kernel of creation that's within you is absolutely amazing and brilliant and incredible. And this expression of you as you are to now is your healing path. It is your healing experience. And I may not like your behavior, so I might set boundaries around that, but I still, at your core, adore you. And so if we can move towards more of that, and then yourself moving into being a guide as well is brilliant. You have this awareness, your interpretations are incredible. And there's this calmness to your voice and your presence that is brilliant.
Didn't used to be there, eh?
It's the growth process, right? Yeah.
Glad you made a comment though about the thought process. And it stuck out to me, and I really wanted to hit on it for a second, if I may, because I had somebody tell me before that you can't intellectualize yourself into this place of awareness. And, as you stated, I'm always reading a bunch of books. But I want to, I feel like I really want to hit on this because I feel like the intellectual side of this process is so important.
Mm,
And it's also, it's not to be discounted and it's not to
mm,
be set aside. And I feel like there are so many people who struggle to have the experience. Well, I don't feel this. I don't feel that. I don't know how I feel. I don't,
mm,
like, and we were, especially in the religious world, in the high control cult religious world, taught to distrust our feelings.
yeah.
And so many of us that are on this journey need help because we can't yet trust our feelings. We have to rely on the intellectual side, on maybe the scholarly side, or we have to learn the things. We have to learn about language. We have to learn about, you know, non-emotional things and not maybe experience so many emotional things because we can't trust that.
Yeah.
And so we're not ready for that.
Right.
And so if anyone does hear this conversation that is feeling like they're on the intellectual side of things, like, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
be there,
It's
embrace
perfect.
that,
Hmm.
let it happen. Because
Hmm.
for me, it was a time, it was a bubble that was so necessary to learn how to redefine terms.
Yeah.
I had to redefine all my terms. What
Yeah.
is love? What is this? What is that? What is God? What is the Bible? What is Satan? What is hell?
Mm,
And I needed to look at it from a scholarly place and understand that, because another thing that religion does is it tells you that you're just an average Joe. You need a pastor, you need a scholar, you need a biblical, theologian
golden.
to interpret these things for you. So what I had to do was spend some time in the intellectual place thinking for myself
Yes.
and allowing myself to redefine, to understand that even scholars don't agree, even biblical theologians do not agree.
Right.
It is not all clear, because if you look at where we got this thing from, it's from a bunch of pieces of busted up paper that have ginormous holes in them. And
Yes.
we have interpreted the best that we could, the best that we've known how. And we've taken, many different places and many different things to come up with what we think is a cohesive moment to put this book together.
Mm,
But then through 2000 years, it's been changed over and over and over and over. And part of my work in the Eastern Classics master's degree program I did was a Sanskrit language class.
mm,
I had to learn enough Sanskrit, and Sanskrit is a symbols based language and tone. So there's different places in the mouth that, the sounds come from. So there's all this work to be done, to where we got to the point where we read the Bhagavad Gita and like translated it from the original text to an English. Like, we would go, verse by verse.
yeah.
And, we had to look at, where's the verb, where's the noun, where's the, like all these different language pieces, right? The things that make up language. And then we would come to class and discuss it, and everybody had different possibilities and potentials that the thing could mean.
Yeah.
And so, though, doing the work of translation like that really helped me to understand that, the Bible is a moment in time where humans have done their very best to, originally did their very best, I think, giving my best intention to everyone, to come up with what they believed was the thing the original documents were trying to say. Unfortunately, certain individuals through time and history have, tried to exert power and control and have changed it to, suit their own needs. So I would encourage people to read other things like the lost books of the Bible and the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, like, the Book of Enoch, like all the things, right?
Right.
Get a wide grasp and don't be afraid to spend the time that you need to spend in your thoughts, in your intellect, in your redefining of your own terms, and not worry about having to have some euphoric experience or some, emotional thing. Like, that'll come when it needs to come. Like, that'll happen for you when you're ready for it to happen. Allow yourself to sit in the intellectual for a while if you need to, and trust the whole process. They're both, it's like the conversation was earlier with light and dark. Like, I feel like, we have the intellect for a reason, right? It's there. It's a gift. It's given to us to navigate and to think clearly about things and to consider things and see perspectives. And, so it's a vital part of the process too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's where I started. And it was important for me to explore beyond. So I'll echo that as the same. I'll add this perspective as well. Human beings are meaning-making machines. I just did a TikTok about this. We can make meaning out of anything, and our meaning is often related to our life experience and the perspectives that came from that.
Yeah.
So if you were raised in a family that allowed open expression and great conversation and those kinds of things, you're going to have a much more open perspective on life than someone who had a very rigid, this is how we do things in this family.
Mm-hmm.
The theologians and pastors and ministers that we're taught to give our intellectual thought and our reasoning over to also have those experiences and or limitations. I think that's why there's 32,000 different registered types of Christianity. Even within any other, there's different practices of Buddhism and Hinduism, etc. I think that speaks to, I'll go back to when I said that there's a theory that says that creation wanted to experience all of itself and therefore created all of us and gave us this opportunity. There are things like, there are people that have collected information, like there's 134 stories of virgin births in different texts, in different writings. So to say that it's in one place is has an ego element to it. We have to open ourselves, I think, as far as we're willing to go. Like sometimes just crack the door open. Sometimes like, okay, a little bit more, a smidgen more, maybe a couple other things. Creator led me to a shamanic journeying class. It was one of the first classes I took. And the gentleman who taught it had been an Episcopalian priest who left the cloth because he said, I just couldn't reconcile things anymore. It didn't make any sense. There were too many questions, too many things that didn't add up. The gentleman who taught the class, a Catholic priest, still in the ministry, who was a priest at a local hospital. So they had done the exploration, and for them that made sense, and that was the path that they chose, and it worked great for them. And so I think there's an encouragement to allow your path to look like your path, and don't let anyone tell you that your path needs to look like theirs. Because if you're coming from a place of intellect, if you're coming from a household like my mom's Scrabble queen, my dad read books this big on history, we were all up in the head. If you're dropping into your heart, that takes a little time to make that trip and that travel, to feel safe, to be able to do that, to feel connected. It doesn't matter how that looks.
Yeah.
It needs to be the journey that is yours alone. And you're likely going to work with a lot of different people. You're going to hear from a lot of different people. And I love that you took the information and explored it within your knowledge paradigm and in connection with your higher self. Because again, we're trying to bring people back to themselves, to a knowing of their higher self and of a divine creator in whatever that means for them.
And I might add too that that journey of, maybe of going from the head to the heart and all of these different experiences, if that needs to happen inside religion for someone, all freedom to do that.
Yeah.
Like I'm finally at a place in my life where I don't regret my past. I don't feel like I've wasted my life.
Right.
Everything I went through was exactly what I needed to go through for exactly the right amount of time I needed to go through it. And if there is someone whose path is that religious path from birth to death, that is exactly what is meant for them. That is exactly what they need. And that's absolutely okay. Some people need that structure. Some people need that, sort of whatever it is, that religious sort of comfort space, that is the thing that maybe lights them up. Until it doesn't light you up, that's fine. If it always lights you up, that's fine. The bottom line is what lights you up.
Yeah. I love that.
Keep going that way.
That's amazing. And I think that's a really good place for us to close up today's conversation. But I know that there's going to be many more beyond this. I love the energy and the dynamic when you and I have a conversation. And I know that others will want to hear from your path and your journey as well. Maybe your daughter-in-law will come on at some point in time, because I know that you guys share your podcast together. Do you want to give the name of your podcast and how people can find you?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So we started a podcast in January called The Becoming Home Podcast. So it's with Charlene and Joelle, and there's another podcast out there that's just called Becoming Home. So I think it's like a home decorating one. So so you'll know you're in the right place if you're with Charlene and Joelle and on The Becoming Home Podcast. Yeah, and then I'm at Charlene at fullyabundantlife.com as well. You can email me there, or the website is fullyabundantlife.com. So yeah, lots of ways to connect.
That's great. Well, good. Are you working with clients or doing any of those sorts of things? Are you starting to explore that, or just not quite yet?
I am starting to do that. I've been working with a couple people here and there. I've told my job that I am letting go of those hours so that I can free up more space to work with more people. I feel like it's a journey we take together that I want to take together with people. And I don't want to like leave people on their own, or I don't want to be like, you're going to do this, it's definitely a partnership, and it's a selective thing. So definitely would work with selected people who are ready to really make movements. I'm ready to work with people who are ready to work and, ready to do the things and dig into the things. So yeah, if there's anybody who is feeling like there's some kind of connection and they're ready to do the work and dig into the things and not be afraid, or be afraid and do it anyway and know that, I've got their back, then let's do it. So yeah.
Amazing.
They can find it at fullyabundantlife.com. There's a little button there. They can book a call and we'll get some information. So yeah.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I love spending time with you.
Yeah, me too. You too. You too. You're such a blessing to the world. And I'm really glad that we met in line to get gluten-free food.
I know. Me too. Thank God we're gluten-free.
That's sweet. All right, good. Thank you.